Hi, I'm Tracy.
And I'm Lonnie.
And today we're going to be talking about 11 things that really suck.
Oh, yeah.
When you're living off-grid.
Oh, they suck. This is a good list.
This is a really good list. So hopefully you enjoy this type of content. And if you do, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. All right. So the first thing that really sucks about living off-grid is the lack of reliable power. So you have, when you're off-grid, you have to kind of figure out your own power supplies. So you have to think about, am I going to do solar? Am I going to do wind? Am I going to do a generator? How am I going to get my power?
And you have backup. You're going to have backup too. And have all that available.
Right, because, again, it's unpredictable. If you are on solar and the sun isn't shining, you get about 3 cloudy days.
And your battery is empty.
And that's if you're being really conservative.
Right.
So you have to think about, the type of power. You have to think about the weather. And it's just very difficult. It's a lot different than when you're in the city or when you're on grid, when you have electricity just flows to your house and you have no problems at all.
Yeah, you have to be mindful of how much power things use too.
Yeah.
And where does that leave you at the end of the day?
Right.
And so you can get through the night keeping your fridge on.
Exactly. You really start to think about everything that you're using. You think about how many watts are in a microwave.
Right.
You think about how many watts does it take to actually charge my device, right?
Yes.
How many watts does it take to run Starlink, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about all these things if you're off grid.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're at home, not so much.
Right.
So lack of reliable power is the number one thing we think stinks about living off grid.
Totally. Number 2 is water supply issues. So how are you going to get water? So if you're off grid, that means you just don't have water delivered to you. I mean, you don't have water available to you. You have to have it delivered to you.
Or you have to go get it.
You have to go get it, or you have to collect it from the sky and treat it.
Or a well.
Yep.
Which is very expensive.
Very expensive. Oh my gosh, yeah. So it's just a matter of what do you do and how much water do you need and how much water are you going to use? Showers, everything consumes water. So just like power, you now are very conscious about how much water you use.
Yes.
In order for you to store it, secure it, and have it available.
Right. And when we're off grid, we are very, very careful. We could literally use 1 gallon, maybe 2 gallons if we're lucky to take a whole shower.
Right.
Whereas if you're at home, you can just let the water flow. It's so fun.
Oh, the steam's amazing.
Exactly. And with being off grid and wondering about your water, you also have to make sure it's purified.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that the water that you're drinking or that even you're showering with is good water.
Got to treat it.
So you have to think about that.
Yeah.
The next thing is social, right? So lack of community. When you're in the city or, in the suburbs, your neighbor is probably right next door.
Right.
But when you're off grid, you may not have a neighbor for miles.
Yeah.
For miles and miles.
You may drive past them and then continue on for a while.
Right. So trying to build community and not being so isolated is really difficult when you're living off grid. Now, our community, when we're off grid, has a party, like a community event, at least once a month. And that they do have activities as well, on a weekly basis.
Right.
And it's such a wonderful community. So
That's super cool.
if you make the effort, you can get to know your community. So give it a try.
Yep. So number 4 is no immediate access to medical care. I mean, if you're off grid, you're just they're not going to be able to get to you with an ambulance. Hospital is going to be kind of far away. You're just not going to get a lot of help.
Right.
And you just have to manage that and be aware of that.
Yeah.
And
if something happens that's an emergency, and you're off grid, you could expect it to take anywhere between a minimum of 30 minutes to hours, depending on how far you are off the grid.
Yeah. Usually they're not stacked like they are in town in the big city where you have more coverage. Out here, they're covering a lot of square miles. And so if something is happening somewhere else, boy, that's just going to delay your emergency.
Yeah, and there's less people, less services available for you off grid. So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
One of the things you can do to mitigate that is to have a first aid kit and to have some CPR basic training that might be able to help.
Yeah.
So the next thing that we think really stinks about living off grid is the time consuming chores.
Oh,
we have to do anytime we're off grid, You know, every morning I got to get all the little solar lanterns. I got to
Yep.
take them outside. If I'm going to make tea, I got to put the tea out in the sun.
Right.
If I'm going to cook out in the sun, I have to make sure that everything is ready to go to be cooking out in the sun because we got to do it early in the morning.
Clouds roll in later, right?
Exactly. So we can't cook in the afternoon. So you really have to kind of understand these things when you're living
Right.
off grid. And so there's a lot of chores. If something breaks, it's very, very difficult to get somebody to come out and fix it.
Right.
So you have to learn how to kind of do some of these yourself if you actually want them done and done correctly and done in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
So think about the maintenance and things like that when you're off grid. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, just like, water, like we got several different water vessels. We got to get those all filled up. So they're in convenient spots, but that takes work.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
I
And
agree
if
with
something breaks, you have to fix it.
And now you got to fix it, and that just pushed off
And there
your
ain't
whole day.
nobody coming to fix your solar
No.
if the solar doesn't work.
Nope.
So
Nope. And while you're down,
he's the guy.
Yeah, well, while you're down, you're not charging either.
That's right. That's right.
Gosh. So number 6 is maintenance challenges. So we're just kind of talking about this as upkeep in all your systems, all your things. We are it for our solar. We are it for anything that we need to fix around here. If something breaks, it's on us to do. And sometimes those can take a long time. Parts you don't have, things you don't. So you gotta.
Yeah. If you don't have a part, you have to go into town.
Yeah.
And if town's a good hour away.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. You're really displaced yourself. So.
Yeah.
And everything is DIY out here.
Pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're lucky, you can find a handyman if he will show up. You don't know
Right.
how many times we've called for help.
Yep.
And someone says they're coming over to do something and they never show up. So it is difficult.
It's a totally different time out here. Like, expectation on when someone shows up.
Yes.
Weeks, not hours.
Not ours. The next thing is limited connectivity.
Yeah.
So out here off grid, we don't have like the internet.
No.
We have to go through cable. So not cable, through satellite. We don't
Yes.
have cable. We have to go through satellite here. So we do use Starlink so that we can be able to access the internet. But generally you don't have a phone line. You don't have,
Nothing coming into you. That's for
not
sure.
if you're off grid.
Nuh-uh.
So we do use like our cell phones. Sometimes we can get connectivity. Sometimes we can't. It's kind of
Right.
intermittent here. So the Starlink does really help us.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's not a lot of services out when you're off grid.
Nope. And on top of that, Starlink has its limitations. I mean, you can't do everything that you're going to do when you're connected into the grid internet.
Well, you can do quite a few things.
It is impressive. It's been very impressive.
It's very expensive
Yeah.
too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So number 8 is weather dependency. You're kind of at the whim of what the weather is going to give you. It's going to rain. Well, you're going to have to deal with the rain. You're going to have to make sure nothing leaks. You're going to have to fix anything if it leaks. If you got clouds over, well, I guess you're not getting solar.
Right.
So you got to be mindful of that. What are the roads going to look like if it gets really
Yes.
muddy or
Oh my goodness.
or snow or
If
anything
we get
like that?
a lot of snow here or when we get a lot of rain, our roads can be shut down.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they're asphalt.
No,
like they're dirt.
gravelish roads.
Ratty roads.
Yeah,
Where are you anyway? We're at the old barn on Choctaw Road.
but they're not the priority
No.
roads they're coming out here to maintain.
Yeah,
right
no
now.
one really is coming out to maintain these roads, and
Yeah.
if you are, you're kind of the lower priority.
Right.
So unfortunately, if you are really dependent on the weather,
Hmm.
if you know that it's going to really rain hard, you make sure that you have your supplies ready to go,
Yep.
and you don't venture out to get stuck in the mud. So you
Right.
just have to be very,
Oh.
very aware of your weather.
Yeah, as well as heat too, right? It'll get hot.
Sometimes it gets surprisingly cold when you don't think it's going to be cold.
Yes, everything. So you always have to plan on this stuff, and it just takes time and effort, and it's just part of the thing. Kind of stinks. It's like you just can't flip the switch and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna cool now, or now it's gonna. Now I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you can't
heat it
just turn
up,
on
and-
your AC. Although we will say we do have a small AC that we
Right.
can turn on. That's pretty efficient.
Yes.
But if the sun is not shining, we're not running the AC because
Nope.
there's no solar for it, right? So you just have to be really, really, aware of the weather. The next thing is food security. So if you need milk and you're out of it,
Oh, yeah.
and the store's an hour away, are you going to get in your car and go an hour away? Not necessarily.
not.
Right. So you have to kind of think through some of the things that you normally use and maybe buy like a backup container of dry milk, or maybe you buy shelf-stable milk, or you
Right.
just kind of have some of those extras on hand. You also make sure that you have some extra canned goods on hand as well, just in case the roads are, not well and you have to, venture out
Right.
into the really bad weather. That way you have stuff on hand so you're not doing that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and on top of that, say your power goes down, you don't have your food storage,
Yeah, it's
you
not
have
in the
your
fridge,
yeah,
right?
so you have to have some backups to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough. It's tough. You got to really think about everything when you're
Yeah,
off
you
grid.
have to manage your food. You
Yep.
have to make sure you're not going to run out of anything.
Oh
You
my
have to make
goodness.
sure that it's going to stay cool, what needs to stay cool. It's a very interesting challenge, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh. So number 10 is pests.
Ooh, haven't you seen them flying around in
Yeah.
this video yet?
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. We got flies, some bees, ants.
Mice, rats,
Giant rat 1, new guy 0.
I mean, we're out in the
Dogs.
Yeah, neighbors' dogs.
neighbors' dogs, kitty cats.
Yeah, neighbors' cats. And so, you're out here in the wilderness. You're not, you're kind of in their space. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of these, so they're just like, hey, we're going to come check you out. Thanks for the shade,
Yeah, thanks for the
what-
shed
yeah.
you put on your property that now I'm going to bury underneath and live.
Right.
We even have snakes too.
Yes.
We got all kinds of fun.
But sometimes, they counteract. The
That's right.
snakes should take care of the mice.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So you come back, when you're, you camp for a bit, then you leave and you come back and then everyone's moved into your space,
Oh, yeah.
right? So you
Yeah,
just
now
have to
you gotta clean it all
right.
up.
And it's not like you can call pest control.
Nope.
Like pest control's not coming out
Yeah,
here.
what are they doing
So
out
you
here?
have to figure all that yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Oh,
The last thing is legal and regulatory laws. So when you live off grid, it doesn't mean you have the freedom to do everything you
No.
want. There's still laws that you have to follow.
Yep.
So things like, can I, perk for a septic system, right? And if I can't, is there an alternative septic system that
Right.
is legally allowed?
oh my gosh.
Can you build stuff on your property? Can you camp on your property?
And how long?
And how long?
If you can.
Right,
Oh,
right. I
all
know
of
that in our county they're trying to reduce it to like 30 days. Right,
Right.
now there isn't a specific rule on how long you can camp, although we do have some CC&Rs that say you can only camp for
Right.
like 90 days. So we come here for 90 days and we leave. We can come back and leave. That way
Right.
we can stay within the law. But there's so many different zoning things that you might not be considering. Just because you have off-grid land doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. It is freedom, but it's not that much freedom.
No.
So we hope that these 11 tips really helped you
Yes.
and that you will consider, if you're thinking about going off grid, some
yeah.
of the things that nobody ever tells you about.
Yeah.
Usually the YouTube videos are about how amazing off grid is, and it really is amazing.
It is.
But we wanted to share these 11 tips with you just so you were aware that it's not always great. And
Yes.
we always want you to remember to just
One blessed step at a time.
have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.